My husband and mother-in-law often spoke in their native language, so I recorded them, had it translated, and discovered a shocking truth that changed everything. My husband and I got married 2 months ago. We are both from different cultures and ethnicities. In his culture, living with his parents is normal. We had discussed moving in with his parents after we got married, but I wasn't very comfortable with the idea. I was born and brought up in America. My parents moved here in their 20s to achieve their dreams. When I was 19, I moved out and they supported my decision, so I told him that I disliked the idea of moving in with the in-laws. He told me that it was an important part of their culture. I told him that I respected our cultural differences, but that I wouldn't compromise on this. I wanted us to have privacy, and I had visited his apartment. It wouldn't fit all of us. Now at this point, I thought that his parents lived with him. He had made it seem that way too. He had told me that he grew up here. We eventually compromised and he asked me to try it out for a few months, and if I wasn't comfortable, then we could move out. So I agreed. We had a small ceremony when we got married, but it was beautiful. I moved into his apartment and his family was extremely sweet. I didn't feel anything was wrong. His mother and he would frequently talk in their native language and I would be curious. I asked him to teach it to me too, but he would refuse and say it wasn't necessary. I told him that I wanted to be a part of their conversations too, but he still wouldn't teach me. Time passed and I took a few classes online, but I was still learning. I only understood a few phrases and words. My husband and I both worked. It had been about a month and a half into our marriage and my mother-in-law kept telling him to get it done. That's the one phrase I understood. When I would look at her, she would just awkwardly smile at me. I could feel that something wasn't right. I would ask him about it and he would always just blow me off, saying that he would tell me later. As the days passed, my mother-in-law got more anxious about it. I tried asking him, but he wouldn't give me an answer either. I was fed up with it. We hadn't even gone on our honeymoon yet. I wanted to go abroad, but he would blatantly refuse and tell me he was busy with work or make up a similar excuse. One day I was speaking with a coworker of mine. He was from the same country as my husband, but I hadn't heard him speak his native language. I randomly asked him if he spoke the language and he said yes. I asked him if he could help translate a few lines for me, and he said of course. I knew it wasn't right, but I was going to record them. I've lived with them for almost 2 months now, and I don't particularly like being left out of conversations all the time. I knew something was up and I was going to find out what. When I went back home that day, I did my normal routine. Once my husband was back, my mother-in-law started speaking fiercely to him. She sounded angry. I immediately started recording their conversation. The next day I met up with my coworker during my break. I made him listen to the recording and his eyes widened. He didn't know who was speaking. He asked me who this was and I told him it was my husband and my mother-in-law. He told me to immediately get out of there and call the cops. I was shocked. I didn't know what to say. It couldn't be that bad, right? I asked him if he misunderstood anything and he said no. He proceeded to explain to me that my mother-in-law was pestering my husband to open a joint account with me and to take note of how much money I had. My jaw dropped. What the freak? This lady, my mother-in-law, didn't speak much to me but acted very sweet. I always thought that she was just a reserved person. My coworker continued to tell me that my mother-in-law was pestering my husband to apply for a green card. She said that my husband was almost yelling at his mother to keep her voice down and kept explaining that for a green card he had to show proof that I was able to support him financially. He then told me that she kept screaming at him to get it done. I didn't know how to react. I remembered my husband asking me to create a joint account and I had refused. I made more than him, but he wasn't aware of that. I wasn't comfortable opening a joint account with him just yet. As I had a few of my prior investment plans that needed to be completed, I hadn't disclosed everything to him, and right now I was thankful that I hadn't. I wasn't aware that he didn't have a green card either. He told me he grew up here. My coworker pulled me into a hug. I didn't notice that I had started crying. He told me to report it to the police and file for an annulment. Divorce was not an option in this case. I went home early that day and packed up my stuff. I had informed my father and he was on his way. My mother-in-law wasn't home, but my father-in-law was. When I rolled my bags out, he tried to stop me. He asked me what was going on, but I just ignored him. My father had come up by now. He was enraged, but was keeping calm because of me. I went back with him to his place. I contacted my father's lawyer and filed a report the same day. My husband called me multiple times that evening. My lawyer recommended not talking to him. This was fraud. One thing my coworker very clearly mentioned was something my husband had said. His exact words were, "Why do you think I married her? Have you seen her house? It's huge. She doesn't know that I don't have a green card. I'll have to coax her into believing my story. We're married now, but we need to wait to make our move." Looks like that asshole forgot that annulment was an option. The audacity they had to speak all of this out in the open right in front of me. It's a good thing I have proof. I don't know how long this will take, but I'll update you all soon. Update 1. 6 months later, the annulment of my marriage has been granted. You should have seen his face when he knew that I knew. I can't believe I got sucked in by him. I actually thought he loved me. I wanted to ask him why. If he actually ever loved me, but the answers were all there in that recording. My lawyer warned me not to contact him during that period. It was better that way. My parents could see how shattered I was over this. I couldn't help but think that if I hadn't recorded them, I would have never known. I would have never thought about this happening or that these were his intentions. I know many of you have asked what his native language is and which country he is from. I haven't mentioned that information because I don't want to promote any stereotypes. Of course, charges were pressed against him and he had to pay for them. There are a few other things I cannot make public. What I can tell you is that he won't get away with it. There are chances that he and his family may get deported. His parents were here on a visitor's visa anyway. I'm still staying with my parents. I'm very grateful for my coworker. If it wasn't for him, I would have never known, and that's horrifying to me. I'm just trying to move on now. Thank you all for your support. Update 2. 1 year later, I never thought I'd be writing another update, but so much has happened that I feel I need to share. The legal proceedings finally concluded last month, and it was even worse than I initially thought. During the investigation, they discovered my ex-husband had attempted the same scheme before with another person in a different state. He had managed to escape detection that time because the previous target hadn't pursued legal action, fearing immigration consequences for themselves. My father's lawyer was incredible throughout this whole process. He managed to uncover a network of similar marriage fraud cases connected to my ex-husband's extended family. Apparently, this was something of a family business, arranging fraudulent marriages for people seeking green cards. They specifically targeted financially stable American citizens who lived alone or had minimal family involvement. The hardest part was discovering that my ex-husband had detailed notes about me from before we even met. He had researched my family's background, my career, and even my daily routines. There were screenshots of my social media posts going back years, all annotated with observations about my financial status and personality traits that could be exploited. It was chilling to see how methodically I had been chosen as a target. My mother-in-law and father-in-law were deported last week. My ex-husband is facing criminal charges and will likely be deported after serving his sentence. The prosecutors found evidence linking them to at least 5 other fraudulent marriages across 3 different states. The silver lining in all of this, if you can call it that, is that my story has helped others. After local news picked up the story with names changed for privacy, 3 other victims came forward with similar experiences. The authorities are now investigating what they believe to be a larger organized crime ring, specializing in marriage fraud. I've been in therapy for the past 8 months working through the trust issues this whole experience has left me with. It's been challenging to process how someone could spend months pretending to love you while methodically planning to exploit you. My therapist says I'm making progress, but I still find myself second-guessing people's motives, especially in dating situations. My coworker who helped translate the recording has become one of my closest friends. He's been an incredible support through all of this, helping me understand cultural nuances I missed and supporting me through the legal proceedings. She even introduced me to a support group for people who have experienced similar situations. My parents have been my rock through everything. They've helped me move into a new place, and we've actually grown closer as a family. Dad still occasionally blames himself for not seeing through the deception, but I keep reminding him that none of us could have known. For those wondering about financial impact, thanks to never creating that joint account and the quick action with the annulment, my finances were protected. The court even ordered my ex-husband to pay restitution, though I'm not holding my breath on ever seeing that money. I'm slowly starting to date again, though I'm much more cautious now. I've learned to trust my instincts when something feels off, and I'm no longer afraid to ask difficult questions early in relationships. I'm also taking language classes again, this time just for myself, and it's actually becoming a passion of mine. To everyone who supported me through my original posts, thank you. Your comments helped me feel less alone during one of the darkest periods of my life. To anyone who might be going through something similar, trust your gut, document everything, and don't be afraid to reach out for help. There are people and resources available to support you. I'm hoping this will be my final update. I'm ready to close this chapter of my life and move forward. While I wouldn't wish this experience on anyone, it has taught me valuable lessons about self-worth, trusting my instincts, and the importance of having a strong support system. Update 3. 2 years later, life has a way of coming full circle. Yesterday, I testified at the final trial related to the marriage fraud ring. My ex-husband was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, followed by immediate deportation. The investigation that started with my case led to the dismantling of an operation spanning 5 states and involving over 20 fraudulent marriages. The prosecutor revealed something that still haunts me. My ex-husband had been doing this since he was 21. I wasn't his second victim, I was his fourth. He'd gotten better at each time, refining his approach, learning how to be more convincing. The notes they found about me were just the tip of the iceberg. But this update isn't about him. It's about healing. Remember, my coworker who translated the recording, well, he's now running a support organization for victims of marriage fraud. I volunteer there on weekends, helping others navigate the legal process and emotional recovery. It's therapeutic, turning something painful into something purposeful. Last month, I gave a talk at an immigration fraud awareness conference, speaking about my experience, which was terrifying, but the response was overwhelming. Several attendees approached me afterwards sharing similar stories. Some had never told anyone before. We're working on creating a nationwide support network. My parents have become advocates too. Dad especially has thrown himself into raising awareness in our community. He's organized workshops with local law enforcement about detecting marriage fraud schemes. Mom jokes that he's found his second calling. The therapy has paid off. I'm dating someone new, someone wonderful who understands my past and respects my need for transparency. He's patient with my occasional moments of doubt and actually encouraged me to keep speaking at awareness events. We've been together for 6 months, and for the first time since everything happened, I'm excited about the future. I finally moved back into my own place, though I have dinner with my parents twice a week. Now our relationship is stronger than ever. Dad no longer blames himself, and Mom has stopped checking my dating app profiles. The language classes I started taking, I'm now fluent in Spanish and starting Mandarin. It's become more than a hobby. I'm considering getting certified as a translator to help others who might be in situations similar to what I faced. Sometimes I think about that, recording how one desperate decision to understand what was happening around me changed everything. My lawyer still uses my case as an example in his fraud prevention seminars. He says my story has helped change how law enforcement approaches marriage fraud investigations. To the Reddit community that supported me through this journey, thank you. Your words of encouragement, advice, and even your anger on my behalf helped me feel less alone. To those who shared their own stories in the comments, you gave me strength when I needed it most. I'm not angry anymore, I'm not even sad. I found purpose in this pain, using my experience to help others avoid or escape similar situations. Life isn't perfect, but it's good, really good. They say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I don't know about that, but I do know that what hurts you can help you help others. And sometimes that's enough to make the hurt worth it. This is definitely my last update, not because the story is over, but because it's time to start a new one. Thank you all for being part of my journey to healing.